Good start. They are off and running in the Southeastern Conference baseball tournament. We'll be talking about it here over the next 2 hours. LSU's got an opponent. It is the South Carolina Gamecocks, who knocked off Georgia and I believe ended the Scott Strickland era a little bit earlier this morning. So we'll get to some of that. Glenn West is going to join us at 1:30, talk about this LSU baseball team as they embark on this SEC tournament journey tomorrow morning. Some NBA stuff in hour number 2. We'll also chat with Fletcher Mackel of WDSU. It's in Sharif's spot. Normally on Tuesdays we talk to Sharif at 2:30. Sharif is off, but Fletcher Mackel was out at the first day of Saints OTAs, and I spoke with some players today, so we'll talk with Fletcher at 2:30. Very much looking forward to that. So again, to get you caught up to speed on what is going on in Hoover today. I know Charlie did a little bit of this in his show and just 1 hour ago, but I actually see things a little bit differently than Charlie does on a couple of spots. We agree on a couple as well, so I do think it's worthwhile for me to kind of go through what I think is on the line today, as you're in a winter go home situation today as the rain continues to fall in Hoover. It is nasty there this morning, but they're powering through it and playing. As I mentioned, Georgia and South Carolina played today, a 9-0 win for South Carolina. They advanced to the double elimination portion, and Georgia goes home. I believe Scott Strickland's time as the head coach at Georgia is done. Georgia does not have a massive winning history. They don't have quite the reputation of LSU over the last 30 years, of Mississippi State over the last 40 years. They don't have the recent success of Vanderbilt and Florida. They're not quite in that tier. But it's a good job. It's a job in a very populous state that produces a ton of baseball players. It's in maybe the best college town in America. They've got a ton of money. It's the University of Georgia. How good's that brand on the football side of things? And Scott Strickland took that job in 2014. He's been there 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Don't count 20, 21, 22, and 23. That is 9 seasons. He has made the NCAA postseason 3 times in 9 years. He has never reached a super regional at Georgia. This is not that hard. Just about everybody in the league makes super regionals here and there. You don't have to go very far in the rearview mirror to find the last super regional for just about anybody. And Georgia should be in that conversation. They don't have to win. He didn't have to win 3 national championships in 9 years. He needs to do better than just getting to the regional 3 times. That's okay for just about Missouri, and that's it. Maybe Kentucky. He's done a very, very poor job. I don't know what other way to say it. And if Georgia does not make a move with Scott Strickland after this season, then they don't care about baseball. They don't take baseball seriously. And that's fine if you don't want to take it seriously. But I'm just telling you, if you don't get rid of a guy who can't get out of a regional in a decade, who has only been to the regionals 3 times, you don't care. So I think the Scott Strickland era ended today. South Carolina now finds itself trying to play its way to a top 8 national seed. I'm going to talk about South Carolina here as far as LSU scouting them in the next segment and how that game needs to go. But South Carolina sits here right now as the number 5 RPI with 20 Quadrant 1 wins. That is exceptional work, and that almost always would get you a top 8 national seed. However, if you look a little bit more deeply into what South Carolina has done, you start to have some questions. One, look at their seeding in the SEC tournament. They're playing, in the one and done. They've lost, going into the tournament, 7 of their last 9 games. They lost a series to Tennessee. They lost a series to Arkansas. They got swept by Kentucky. They lost a series to Auburn. They lost a series to Vanderbilt. They split with LSU. They lost 5 of the 9 series they completed. So they're down the pecking order as far as SEC teams go. They're a host, and they're very safe in that, in my opinion. 16 wins in the league and only played 19 games. Just picked up their 17th. The RPI is great. Strength of schedule is great. Quad 1 wins are great. But you lost a lot. So they've still got work to do. I'll talk about what I expect to see them do from a mound perspective coming up in the next segment, and I think that's obviously pertinent to LSU, as the Tigers will see South Carolina tomorrow morning at 9:30, assuming they can get through this weather in Hoover, which it's still raining, but they're still playing, which is a good sign. Tennessee and A&M are playing right now, and both teams are throwing non-rotation guys. You got Seth Halverson going for Tennessee. He's been one of their best bullpen guys. And then you've got Troy Wansing, who was in the rotation against LSU, has made some SEC starts, but has been pretty poor pretty much the entire season. Tennessee's 16 in the RPI. They're 16 and 15 against Quad 1. They've got some work to do if they want to host. Right now, they're a nightmare 2. They are just the worst case scenario for a 2 seed because they don't have to throw Chase Dolander against a 3 seed. They could throw Drew Beam against a 3. They could throw Lindsey against a 3 and save Dolander for you. And if you're a 1 seed in a regional, you're not expecting to see a Chase Dolander on Saturday. It's just very rare that a 2 seed has the luxury to hold a top 10 pick to Saturday. So that's where Tennessee is now. Now, if they get rolling and they get to Sunday or they win this thing, they probably need to win it, quite frankly. But if they win this thing and move their RPI up from 15 up to 10 or 11, and all of a sudden they've got 21 Quad 1 wins plus an SEC championship, they could be a top 16. But they've got work to do, excuse me, as of right now. A&M is in the tournament right now. That's the way I see it. A&M is 34 in the RPI, which is okay for a bubble team. We're not talking about top 16 hosts. We're talking about getting in as a 3 seed. They're 34 in the RPI. They won 14 SEC games, which is usually right at your barometer. Ole Miss won 14 last year, and they went home on one and done day, and they sat at home in Oxford all week long from Tuesday to Monday, and then they went and won the national championship. I think if you look at what A&M did this year, they won more weekends than Kentucky did. If you look at their SEC schedule, of course, the opener was against LSU, and they lost 2 out of 3, and they got swept by Tennessee. Then they won a series against Ole Miss. They won a series against Auburn. They won a series against Missouri. They won a series against Kentucky. And they won a series against Florida. Then they won a series against Mississippi State. 6 conference winning weekends for Texas A&M. I believe they're in, and I think it's very likely, in my opinion. I never put stock into where D1 Baseball or Baseball America or whatever regional prognostications are placing teams. I just don't think they can do that with any real degree of accuracy. However, down here, we see a lot of Southeastern. We see Southern when they're in. We've seen Louisiana Lafayette a couple times. Tulane's come a couple of times. You've seen that regional tie-in. We saw UNO in 2008. We've seen Southern Miss before. A lot of times it's regional. Sometimes they send you Utah Valley or Northeastern. Sometimes they send you Oregon State or send LSU to Oregon, vice versa. I mean, we've seen it all, but regional ties do some things at times. And right now, there's not a single lock regional host in the state of Texas, which is very rare. TCU, A&M, Texas, Texas Tech, even Baylor at times, Rice in the past. Somebody's going to host a regional in the state of Texas. Right now, there's not a lot. But if Texas does some work this week, they tied winning the Big 12, but the 3 teams that tied didn't have awesome resumes. So maybe Texas gets, and if Texas gets a regional, they're going to get Dallas Baptist as a 2 and Texas A&M as a 3. I feel confident saying that. It's just what the committee likes to do. Remember a few years ago, Houston hosted, and they sent Texas and Texas A&M as the 2 and the 3 to go tangle. That's just what committees like to do. They did it in the NCAA tournament in basketball this year. Texas and Texas A&M were set to meet in the second round, and Texas A&M got upset. But I think A&M, even with the loss today, is in. If they win today, you can set in stone. And I think they're a 3, and I think they're headed to Austin, assuming that Texas doesn't fall flat in the Big 12 tournament. You got Kentucky and Bama playing. That's the afternoon game today. It's going to be Darren Williams, who's made 3 SEC starts against Hunter Furtado, who's a bullpen left-hander for Alabama. Kentucky needs to go nuts in this thing to get a top 8. They're down the pecking order as far as SEC teams go because they lost a lot of series down the stretch. But they do have some really good matches. Their strength of schedule is 1, their RPI is 2, and they have 20 quad 1 wins. So if they can get rolling, they can steal a top 8. If I'm an LSU fan, I'm kind of looking going, I'd really wouldn't mind it if Kentucky lost today. I don't feel strong and convicted in that. Like, it's got to happen, but I'm pulling for Kentucky to lose today. I'm pulling for Alabama. Bama, according to D1 Baseball, is a host right now. And I'm not going to tell you that's, like, ludicrous or crazy, but I'm not 100% convinced. I don't know that the Tide has beaten enough really good teams. They've got series wins over Ole Miss, Missouri, and then you go to the two that are pretty good in Vanderbilt and Texas A&M. But lost the weekend to LSU, got swept actually. Lost the weekend to Mississippi State, lost the weekend to Arkansas, lost the weekend to Kentucky, lost the weekend to Florida. And you played Auburn before they got hot. I guess you give you credit for that. I think they're fringy. And if Alabama doesn't win today, I just don't think they're a host. So they're playing for a lot. Both these teams are playing for a lot this afternoon. If you're an LSU fan, I'm pulling for Bama to win that game against Kentucky. And the nightcap tonight is Auburn, who is going to throw Tommy Vail tonight. I don't know why he came out of the game so early on Saturday, but he only threw a couple of innings, so he's going to pitch in this game. And Missouri's going with Javen Pimentel. Missouri's just playing to try to win the tournament. They got to win the whole thing to get in the NCAA tournament. Auburn is looking like a host to me. I don't think there's much doubt in that. What they've done down the stretch has been remarkable. They finished the last 5 SEC weekends at 12-3. Swept the last 2. Now, I know Ole Miss is not even trying at this point, but I think the metrics look good for Auburn. I think they will be a host. So that kind of sets the table for the day in the Southeastern Conference. South Carolina moving on, trying to get a top 8. Georgia is going home, going to fire their coach. A&M is kind of playing for their lives. I think they're okay, but they certainly feel good if they win today. Tennessee's looking to get a host site. They got to win some games. Kentucky's trying to get a top 8. They need to win today. Bama's trying to host. I think a loss knocks them out of that. Auburn, throw in Tommy Vail today. They're trying to get a host and an outside shot at a top 8. Maybe if they won the whole thing. That's a lot for me right now, but that's potential. And then Missouri just got to win the whole tournament. I don't think they're going to do that. So that's the day in the Southeastern Conference baseball tournament. The rain did come this morning. They were able to get the game off pretty much on time, and it's still raining, and they're still playing in Hoover. Apparently, if they can get through this morning, kind of cell that's moving through in Hoover and get to the afternoon, we should be in some pretty good shape for the next couple of days. However, that doesn't guarantee that a water main's not going to break, a sprinkler's not going to go nuts. There's going to be some sort of issue somewhere where they got to clear the field because this is the SC tournament, and that's kind of what we do. But right now, A&M and Tennessee playing in the bottom of the second inning. They are scoreless over in Hoover. All right, LSU's going to play South Carolina. I'll give you my thoughts on who LSU will throw. I'll give you my thoughts on who South Carolina is going to throw. I sent a little text up there to see if we could check on some things. Got a report coming back. We'll do that next on the Hunt Palmer Show.
This is Hunt Palmer. Our listeners fire off their opinions on the jimsfirearms.net hotline at 499-1045. Keep listening for your next chance to shoot us your thoughts with the jimsfirearms.net hotline on 1045 ESPN Baton Rouge.